Here we go. Mm-hmm. Hi, my name's Tim Macpherson. I'm the publisher of Saltwater Boat Angling, and this is one of our series of webinars that we do in association with Navionics. This one's about place fishing in Sussex, and we're going to talk about tackle, tactics, behaviour, and one or two other aspects of it. And we're going to see some interesting behaviour that we've observed while shooting using an underwater camera when we've been fishing over the last couple of years. And some of that footage is quite interesting. So first off, we'll talk about lifestyle and breeding. Plaice, nice little animation of the Plaice as he comes in. There you go. First of all, Plaice move offshore in the autumn. They tend to breed. They fed themselves up. They're very fat at that time of year. Very nice to eat, and in fact, some of the best catches I've had have been at that time of year because they're at fighting weight, if you like, and they're also still hungry and eating hard. They spawn from November to February, and this varies depending on the population. Depends on the population. Excuse me, we've got a bit of feedback here. Sorry. Apologies for that. Yes, they spawn from November to February, and that does vary a bit depending on where the populations are. We've got a population in the Channel, we've got a population in the Irish Sea and one in the North Sea as well. I don't have any evidence to suggest that they mingle. I think they are separate populations. The Irish Sea I think they tend to go a bit earlier and come back a bit earlier. Plaice reach maturity is about 3 to 5 years. I guess that's kind of about that big. You will find roe in fish about that size. Again, it does vary from population to population, and some scientists believe it could take up to 7 years for them to reach maturity. They then return from late March to April. Again, as with all these things, it does vary depending on where you are, but in Sussex, we start seeing them in March. They're pretty thin. I mean, if you hold them up to the light, you could see through them. You can see their bones and they're shot roe, but they are hungry and they are relatively easy to catch. What I've found actually is that the bigger ones tend to turn up first. I don't know why that is. You get a few small ones that are already resident and maybe have not actually left the area, but the big ones turn up first. And some of the biggest ones I've had have been caught in March and April. But you do catch big ones right the way through the summer, of course. And in Sussex, we don't have a population that grows to the same size as you get in the Shambles Bank, for instance, in Devon. You know, a good fish here is about £5. Down in Cornwall, they go up to about £7. So there you go. Just moving on. The optimum fishing time. Well, I've always found that is. Hold on, just move that back. The optimum fishing time. I found that starts again in kind of April time is when they start to get nice and fat. About now, some of the footage you'll see later was shot at this time of year, and runs right the way through to maybe the end of June. For some reason, we have a bit of a gap in July. I don't know why that is. You tend to catch less around here in July, and then they come back on really strong at the end of August. You get a sort of feeding frenzy at the end before they're going off to spawn. Favourite natural foodstuffs. Well, for those of you who fish regularly for Plaice, this is fairly obvious stuff, I guess. But one of their favourite things is excuse me. one of their favourite things is pea mussels, which are extremely common around here. And quite often, if you gut plaice, you'll find sort of green slime in their stomachs, and that is when they're gorging themselves on pea mussels. But actually, they'll take anything. They're predatory, especially the bigger ones. You know, they are very predatory. They'll take small fish, they'll take prawns, and in fact, we use prawns quite a lot, cooked and uncooked, to try and catch them, as you'll see again later on. And they also eat worms. They eat crabs. Very often find them full of little tiny crabs, particularly in the late spring. So, rigs and bait. This is just an example of what we do in Sussex. Obviously, everyone's got their own favourite baits and their own favourite rigs and their own favourite ways of combining baits. But just starting off with one of our all-time favourites, which is the lugworm. There you go. Very common. We use it all the time here as a staple for plaice. Actually, in other parts of down in the West Country, they tend to use ragworm more than they use lugworm, but it's still a pretty standard thing to catch. There's a nice example of one that's just been pulled out of the sand. There we go. Now, rigs. This is the interesting bit as far as I'm concerned, really. We just go through a few basic items that we use, and again, as with all tackle, it's down to you know, what people's favourites are. You've got here, we use spreaders, and I'll talk about those in a minute. There you go. Right, and the basic tackle and items that we use are outlined there. The thing that we use more than anything else is the spreader, which you can see here. These things are designed really to hold two hooks. They have little swivels on each end where you attach the snuds, and some people actually cover these things in beads, and that's not a bad idea, and again you'll see why a bit later on. Now, these are made by a local guy he makes them to sell, but all the profits that he gets from this goes to the RNLI, so they're a favourite tackle item in this part of the world, and if you want to get some, you can always contact me, and we do sell them through our website. So, just moving swiftly on. So we use spreaders when drifting for plaice. It's an example of one with a plaice, a nice little early season plaice, and a watch lead. And again, you can see the beads and the spinners and all the bling that we put on it. And again, another picture of you know, how we rig that up. Now, here's the basic rig that I like to use. Very effective, very lethal actually, as far as I'm concerned. And you can see it's slightly unusual in that the hook, which is a 1/0, has got a slightly different type of knot on it. And the reason I do that is because it helps to keep the worm straight on the hook. Also associated with it, obviously, there's a lot of beads and a little fluttery spoon. But some people like to cover their whole snood in beads, others not. I just prefer to minimise my tackle losses if I get if I get snagged. And this little spoon is quite important. I have caught lots of plaice without any of this bling on. Actually, it does depend on how hungry they are, but it does attract them. And this little spoon flutters in the tide, or even if it's a big tide, vigorous tide, it will, it'll spin around and actually cause quite a lot of noise for the fish. There are other rigs that people use as well. There's a single hook one there. I've got an example of it here. Again, lots of bling on it. I actually prefer mine a bit further down towards the hook. You can see that's got nothing on the bottom of it. But again, these are very popular, and I've used them as a single hook rig. And people also have dropper hooks on them, so they're fishing two hooks on a kind of wishbone rig, and that works too. As with all these things, people have their favourite ways of doing things, and in other parts of the country they use very similar tackle. So next is leads. I won't dwell on this. We all know about leads, but these things here, these watch leads that we were seeing earlier in that picture, they are very effective, as most of you will know, because there is a sort of an effect that happens where when the lead hits the bottom, it actually puffs up lots of sand, and they're more effective than these ones for doing that. And you'll see why a little bit later. Although these do have these bullet ones work in a slightly different way. So underwater footage showing plaice behaviour. Now I filmed this using a water wolf camera. That's one of these little gadgets here. This is very, very cheap, only about £100. They're very commonly used now. Lots of people have them. It's got a tiny little lens. The actual nuts and bolts of it are in here, and you can see there's a space there for the chip and a little on-off button and a charging port. And it's watertight based on that little cap that goes on the top of it. I set it on quite a long snood because, of course, with a spreader you've got quite a wide area here where the baits are laid out, and you'll see in the footage in a minute. And so you need quite a wide focal length. So I attached a bit of line to it and then a little swivel at the end, you can see, which then attaches onto the top of the spreader. Obviously you have to turn the camera on before you put it down. I'm afraid I've made that mistake. Make sure it's charged. If you get one, make sure it's charged up. They last. They film in little chunks of 20 minutes, and they last for about an hour until the battery runs out. So now we're going to look at some footage of plaice and underwater. And the quality of this footage is obviously not what you expect if you're filming at the water's surface, but it is quite revealing. And although some of it can be a challenge to watch, I'll just turn that on and we'll talk you through it. So now here you've got a rig lying on the bottom of the sea. Oh, I'd just like to say that my mouse is very sensitive, and sometimes when it's running video, it will run the thing back. So my apologies if that happens. You can see the lead on the bottom, and here, interestingly enough, with the baits, there was a plaice. We didn't know it was there, and it was just sitting there. And I've stilled this so you can have a closer look at it. There it is. It's just sitting. The bait is clearly out of its mouth, and just needs to be looking at it, which is very curious. I don't know why it would do that. Maybe it was attracted to the bait and then decided it wasn't what it wanted. You can see I've got a little bit of lugworm, and then that there is either squid. I think that's a bit of prawn on that one. You can see the way this lead works. This is a bomb lead. It's kind of sitting up in the tide as the boat is pulling the line along, and you can see how the spreader works quite nicely in that little shot. There it is when you just dropped it on the bottom. It's all a bit of a heap. But the tide wasn't running very strongly on this day, so we didn't get a lot of movement, but we were still catching fish. And you can see now there's a fish that's turned up in the top of the shot. He's coming around, having a look. There he is. And here's a go at the bait. You can see he's got hold of it. He's quite a small one. I didn't really, at the time, didn't know it was completely hooked. What I tend to do is, if I get a bite like that, I'll drop the lead back. There, I decided I caught him and reeled him in. And there we are again. Another shot. There's a starfish. There's a fish coming in. Two fish. That's quite a big one, the one at the top. And then the little one seems to get there first, and here's a go at it. Look at the behaviour of this one. It seems to be terribly interested in the bait. It's just sort of hanging around the other one. And then it gets spooked by the movement. And there's another one. I think that might be the same one that came back. The interesting thing is they don't just sit in the sand and lie there until your bait goes over the top of them, which is what a lot of people think. They actually are very curious, and here's that one coming back again. They're very curious. They're obviously attracted by noise, and I don't think scent plays a huge part in it. But I mean, obviously it does. But I think vibrations and noise, and they do have very good eyesight. So there, he's having a right go at that. And that other one's just circling around. And there he is. I don't know. He's decided he doesn't want that for dinner, so he's off. Maybe if I'd left that down there a bit longer, he would have taken that bait. There's another shot here. Another plaice turns up. This was a very good day. We must have had about 40 or 50. And obviously I only had the camera on for about 40, 45 minutes or whatever it was before the battery ran out. But they were all, in this particular session, all quite small. And there he is, he rushes off, but he doesn't take it, he pinches the prawn on the end. You can see the bottom we were fishing on is very rocky, there's bits of broken shell, mostly sand. Here we go again, another one. Coming round. Now this is interesting, look, he actually follows the bait up and takes it halfway up the water column and then drags it back down again, and of course I end up getting stuck with somebody else's tackle, which is, I think it was Jim Whippy's there on that day. Now we've got more here. Every time I do this, it's amazing how different, we get different stuff from it and different behaviours. We've had gurnards, you'll see a gurnard later. We've even fished a filmed turbot, although that proved to be quite a challenge because you really can't see them, and they're not like plaice that are constantly moving around. They only actually move when you spook them or when they decide to go for the bait. So you have to be very eagle-eyed when you're reviewing this kind of footage. But it does reveal some behaviours that I've certainly never seen before in these fish. The wobbling is unavoidable. The camera wobbles because it's pivoting in the tide, and it's quite difficult to stop that. We tried using a diving vane that you'd use when you were for a spinner, but it didn't seem to work. There we go. There he is, taking it again. And there's two. By this time, I guess we created quite a lot of noise underwater, and don't forget there were other boats nearby. I mean, there were 3 or 4 people fishing for the boat in pretty much the same line. Here we go again. Look at those spots on that. That's lovely, lovely, lovely clear spots. Here he goes. He really hit that, but I didn't feel the bite. And he dropped it. They quite often do that. They'll take the bait at the end. If you don't, I usually use just half a lugworm, because if you use too much, they will peck at it, especially the smaller ones, which some people might say is a good thing. But actually, even the bigger ones, are sometimes a bit wary. So keep your bait lean and mean. I cut prawns in half and put them on the hook, partly because they're so expensive to use for fishing. That's a better way of doing it. Or tiny strips of squid work as well. There you go. You see all the dust, sand puffing up on the seabed there. There you go. That's that one. And then we'll move on to the next one, which there you go. Now this one. Apologies, by the way, if you're getting a bit of judder or your broadbanding isn't great, you might find that some of this footage, which has kind of been outputted in MPEG 2, might sort of freeze on you. Now this is a bit murky to start with, so bear with me. This was a shot a couple of weeks ago. You can see there's one side of the spreader, there's the other. The tide was running a bit more, and we've got a watch lead on here, and it behaves in a completely different way. It sits flat on the bottom rather than standing up when you pull the weight along. But the thing about this is that the watch lead is it will actually, the puffing up is clearly visible, and it's much more prominent than with the other leads. You can see the tide's running pretty strong. You can see all the plankton streaming along. There we go. Now this little shot here, it was just interesting. There's a plaice that's turned up. You can see him there, very murky. Gets better, and the substrate is different. There's some little cliffs of what look like sandstone here, which is quite interesting. And we didn't know that was there. You can see there's a plaice there, and he's sitting. Look, he's sitting up. He's just sort of perched on his fins. Which is behaviour that's been observed before, but it's quite nice to see it. And there's a whiting suddenly appeared. We were being plagued by whiting, I'm afraid, on this trip. We caught quite a few, partly because we're filming at relatively slack tide. We were against wind as well, So even when the tide did get going, there's a fish coming in the top there. And another one there. That's two fish, one there and one there. And they're both doing that little perching on their fins, which I didn't see the other ones do. And it may be, I think the angle we've got on this is a bit more an angle on this shot than there was on the other one. That was more straight down. I think this is a bit more angled because the tide was running a bit stronger. These were all filmed off of Hastings, a mark that's well known to everybody locally. And interestingly, we didn't really know it was there until we started using Navionics mapping sonar chart, and we found that there was a whole series of little depressions and lumps in a line. So we sort of matched it to where all the marks were that we were catching fish. And in fact, this is where this was filmed on these marks that we'd identified. Previously, what we saw on our sonar charts were just flat bottom with a contour spread out. You can see that fish going round and round. Yeah. And there's something here, I don't know, you get a lot of thornback rays around here, and I wondered if that might have been it looked like it might have been. Anyway, that fish took the bait. You can see that he's making a hell of a mess of everything. He's up in the corner there, just around here. Oh, it's a gurnard. That's where you see a gurnard. He was a nice one. This was about 2.5 pounds, this gurnard. Now, there you go, reeling him up. Now this is going back down at the bottom, and here we see one of the problems with spreaders. The bait has got stuck round the shaft of the spreader, so there's only one bait. But then it doesn't seem to put that fish off. He's turned up. It's only a small one. But in the end, he actually manages to shake the hook off the spreader. There you go. This is getting a bit brighter. I'll save the best till last in terms of what we're going to see. You can see he was really giving it some, fighting very hard. And I had the camera on. I knew this fish was on there, so I was kind of leaving it down there to see what would happen. Very often we've seen footage of Plaice, and here we go. Now back down the bottom, base on the bottom. We start moving, and that is a big fish. Now that is incredible. If you see that, it's actually attacking the bait. Not the bait. It's attacking the lead. It's incredible. It's there you go, and it comes and does it again. Look, whack! And I was feeling those bites, thinking it was whiting. Look, he's really going for the watch lead. I've never ever seen that. I mean, that's extraordinary. I've seen them attacking the spinners and the beads and all sorts, but never that. Don't know why. He was keeping up pretty well, and then another one comes in. Look at that. That's even bigger. Now the first one you saw, which I think is the one I caught, was 3 pounds. So that one's, you know, going up. Maybe 3.25, 3.5. We caught 2 others just under 3 pounds in the same session. He's now taking it up here. You can see he's just about to take it. But here comes another extraordinary piece of behaviour. Now look at this. He's been hooked. I'm reeling him in, and suddenly out of nowhere, the other one turns up. And again, I have seen this quite a lot with Plaice following them. So another fish up. He doesn't seem to be attacking the bait, but he's certainly following the other fish. And here he comes. I'd just like to prove the size of this by showing you we actually got the net out. Jim Whippy never gets a net out for anything less than 3 pounds. So here we go. Here he comes, out of the water. There we are, slightly seeking. Now this is just the last bit. This here is a line from a sunken net, and we nearly lost everything on this, and a camera, everything. So we were very lucky. I managed to bend the hook out, and it's a very disappointing. And on that mark, we found that a bit later on there was a pile of sunken netting full of fish on it. So there you are. There's the underwater footage. There's lots more of this footage on our YouTube channel. There's the fish. I got Jim to pose with it. It's a three, as I said, there's a 3-pounder. We had 2 others, which are on the cover of this month's magazine, which you can see here. There's Jim with 2 nice 3-pounders. It was a great trip. So there you go. And well, thank you very much for taking part. If you've got any questions, then please feel free to ask me questions on the questions panel, and I'll answer them as soon as I can when I get them. And that's the end of the webinar. Thank you very much indeed. The next one we'll be doing is in a month's time. Look out for your emails. We'll be sending out a note about that, and that's going to be about lure fishing from boats. And I'm hoping to have fishing guide Robin Howard, who's a well-known Brighton-based fishing guide. He also does stuff in other parts of the world as well. So that should be really good. And we're hoping to get some footage, live footage, from his boat to show you. So thank you very much.